Media. This is Salam Media coming to you live from South Africa.
The time is just gone 9:34 a.m. and France obviously heading towards elections, and two candidates, the far-right presidential candidate Marine Le Pen coming up against the current president Emmanuel Macron. But the question is, what are some of the issues going into this election? And one of them is Islamophobia. And we joined on the line this morning, all the way from France, and always a pleasure having him with us here on Salam Media, Daryl Bradford Smith. Daryl, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Anayat. As always, it's a great pleasure and an honor to spend any time with you on air. I have a favor to ask. It'll take about 30 seconds here to correct something I said in another broadcast, not on this network, sadly, but on another. And I made a mistake, and I want to correct it before we start here. I was citing some statistics, Anayat, on the damage being done by COVID to individuals being locked down in their homes. And in the United States, there were, in 2 months' time, there was a year's worth of people who committed suicide. So that was a 600% increase in the number of people who had committed suicide in the United States. I mistakenly said it was 6,000% by error. And I did not have an opportunity on that other network to correct that statistical mistake I made, and it was just chewing me away that I couldn't fix it. So I'm using your airtime to make a correction here, if you will be, I'm trying to be as honest as I can with everything I do, and I just misspoke. Basically, I went from 600 to 6,000, which is actually a 3 sigma change, and to go from a 3 sigma change is a big one. So I thought I would have to correct that. So thank you very much for letting me do that.
Well, no, that's not a problem. It's always a pleasure, Daryl. Now, Daryl, let's talk about France, and we're talking about this election and looking at these two candidates and what we find. And this one aspect I'd like to talk about, and we've seen Marine Le Pen talking about the hijab ban, and also we've seen Emmanuel Macron the last time I think you and I spoke with, this whole question surrounding freedom of speech in France as well. But
Yes.
This is a difficult time that we are living in. These are unprecedented times. There are many, many issues that the entire world is facing as a result of this pandemic and the crisis. Yet we find candidates like the two in France and the latest with Marine Le Pen, who has time now to talk about a hijab ban, which is a major issue going into an election.
Well, let's first have a slight history lesson here on Marine Le Pen. She's been involved in presidential politics now for 3 different presidents here. She's been she ran this last time against Macron. And before that, she ran against Francois Hollande. In both instances, she had very high numbers going into the election period. But France is very anti-racist. They don't want to be considered racist. So every election cycle, whoever the powers that be want to put into office, they automatically run that person against Marine Le Pen, and they will win. They could put somebody with who is in a coma against Marine Le Pen at election time, and that person in the coma would win, because the French public will get together, right and left, any side of any spectrum that you can discuss, and she will be taken down because the French won't accept her as a group. So they've been using that as a way of controlling elections for a couple of cycles. Here's the real issue. The people that are behind Mr. Macron are the same people that are behind Marine Le Pen. And if that sounds strange to you, you're not understanding the fraudulent right-left paradigm. When they separate people between the right and the left, it's basically used as a control mechanism for the election process and for the social changes they want to put in. That's the same in the United States. It's the same in France. It's the same in Germany. Each side of these elections are controlled by the big money in the background, and in every instance, it's always the same people.
Yes, certainly, Daryl. But again, as I said, is the key question here is there are many major issues that are facing France at this point in time. Why
Mm.
focus on an issue like hijab, for instance?
Well, again, to create division and derision within the society is an important element to getting the public to go along with whatever they suggest or whatever they demand. Fear makes people motivate. And they are trying and have been trying for a very long time to make Islam a fearful subject to the French public. And it's worked. And they created, as we've talked about, ghettos around the major cities in France where young ex-practicing Muslims, they don't practice anymore. A lot of young people that don't live in very poor conditions. They have very poor prospects for jobs. They have very little money in their pockets. And the areas have become ghettoized. They have become very poor, very difficult to live in. And the police, in many instances, are afraid to even go there. So what we've got is a two-tiered economic system in France that excludes the Islamic population that was imported here in the 1970s from North Africa, mostly from Algeria, and a lot from Tunisia as well, and some from Morocco. But that whole community is marginalized, and their working life is very limited, and their education is sparse or poor. And so a lot of these young people are angry, and they are acting out like most people who are in their situation do. And then they're getting blamed for all the social problems that are arising in the society. So in other words, they were set up to be the bad guy. And so what's happening is whenever the politicians need a bad guy, they point to this group.
Yes. Now, Daryl, we've seen Le Pen, obviously, and as you mentioned, she's run previously for president, and she's, it seems to be rhetoric on her part because she seems to be repeating the same thing over and over again. And we've seen what had happened in 2017, where she had lost as well, where she repeated the same rhetoric. And this whole fear factor that you're speaking about in terms of making people fearful of Islam, seems, like I said, the only issue. Yet, I suppose you have noticed, and you've been saying it for many, many years, the difficult times that are lying ahead, where we find that the majority of French people, the majority of the French public, have actually forgotten, or they seem to be ignoring their particular circumstances and the condition that they find themselves in more ways than one.
Well, you're right, and this is actually a global thing. This plandemic, I will call it, this plandemic has people so fearful that they can actually maneuver and move the society in the directions that they wish through the fear. Fear is a great motivator of populations. There's just no question about it. If you're a well-read human being about politics, you've read the book The Prince by Machiavelli. He talks about it extensively, and so does Sun Tzu in his book. And so essentially the art of war will tell you that if you want to control groups and populations, you go to the areas in their life that are going to motivate them to move in your direction, and that's fear. And fear is working well in the world. It's 24/7 fear of the Muslim population, fear of the COVID pandemic, and excuse me, and then alongside those fearful statements, they have suggestions that go out repeatedly. Act this way, do this thing, wear 9 masks on your head, be fearful of anybody who's from North Africa, and everybody's walking around in a state of complete fearful confusion. And they just start saying to the government, please save me from these feelings of fear that I have. Save me from my economic fears. Save me from my fears of my neighbor. Save me from the fears of my health condition. And everyone's walking around petrified. And it comes to the point where people begin to just tune out. They don't even realize what's happening around them. And that is the state of the French population right now. They've been battered and beaten down to the point where they don't even have a clue of the reality that surrounds them, but they are fearful of all of it. and it's very sad to watch. I have to say the effectiveness of it is quite startling. I've been involved in understanding these facts for over a generation, and to watch my fellows in this society because so confused by what's really happening to them is painful to me. Even when I explain it to them, they still don't see it. People are so caught up in their own fearful states that they're unable to even see facts right in front of them.
Well, Daryl, thank you very much for that. And I know you and I could have gone on for much longer, but certainly I'm looking forward to the day where you and I can have a lot more detailed discussion on some of these matters. And I'm sure there will be many that you and I will be talking about. But for now, thank you very much. And we pray for your safety as well, for you, your family, and all the best to you, sir.
Thank you, Anayat. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Daryl Bradford Smith joining us out of France this morning against the background of Marine Le Pen talking about the hijab ban, a rhetoric that she's been repeating over and over again.
Your very own